This is the BBC.
Dear brothers and sisters, all are welcome here at the Confessions podcast, whether saint or sinner.
Hello and welcome to a very special Confessions podcast. I, as you may know, am Simon Mayo.
And I'm Jo Wiley, and we're starting a brand new show on Monday, 14th of May at 5 o'clock on Radio 2. Now, I'm sure you'll be pleased, delighted probably, to know that Confessions will continue in our new show, which means the Confessions podcast will still be finding its way to you on your phone or your tablet every Friday.
Now, there was obviously no show this week as we go through the exhaustive preparations required before you're allowed to start a new show, but we haven't left you bereft. Here follows another collection of glorious confessions from the Crypt.
The Confessions podcast. Please be seated.
Gather round, another Drive Time Confession. Send yours to confessions@bbc.co.uk. If you miss any, the Confessions podcast, available every Friday. Tonight's is in the financial wheeler-dealer theme, which we're running. What with Michael always talking about The Big Short after.
Okay, this could be interesting.
And this one comes from Quentin. Thank you, Quentin. Before I start my confession, I must point out that myself and my friend in question are 40-something investment bankers. I often think our friendship was forged by the fact that we worked long hours, we're of similar age and backgrounds, and we're making our way in the heady 90s banking industry. In hindsight, I think our friendship is probably more due to the fact that no one else wants to be friends with us. I understand. Perhaps many of the listeners would think being an investment banker in pre-crisis London would be a deed enough for forgiveness. And in this, there might be a case to be answered. Let's call my friend Steve, because that's his name and he doesn't deserve anonymity. This singular confession was prompted by the request for knee surgery confessions. Quite a specialist window that we were looking for. Surely a unique opportunity for me to partly unburden my dark soul. The story begins in the early noughties when my colleague and I were quietly competitive in long-distance running and drinking. The odd 10k or half marathon in a picturesque seaside town gave us an opportunity for a weekend away. Few beers before, few beers after, returning to our wives on the Sunday with our halo shining and another gaudy ribboned medallion to hang on the coat hook by the door. Well, the rigorous training required for a hobby that requires both running and drinking is something that requires true dedication. As time went on, the hours of road training definitely took a backseat to the pub training. Often we would stand on a chilly Saturday morning amongst the finely sculpted participants, smelling of tequila rather than deep heat, but we always finished our races and enjoyed our first pint wrapped in a tinfoil blanket, which we called the pint of essential rehydration. Just remember that. The weekend in question began with my wife's news that her mother was coming to spend the weekend, surely mitigating circumstances for any worthy confession. Without pausing for a second, I excused myself from the weekend with a story of running a half marathon with Steve. We'd run this particular half marathon in question the year before, enjoying the town with the added bonus of a fine pub just over the finish line. But it's all planned, I whined. We've got the train tickets and the hotel and everything. I thought I told you we always run this race. Steve is going for his personal best. The perfect crime instigated a hasty phone call to Steve. We just had to enter the race 4 days before the start date. Now, this is where I have to ask forgiveness. The race website closed. I called the organisers to be told quite firmly that the amateur entry had been closed for some time. There were only a few professional places available. I breezily said, "Oh, that's okay, then my colleague was a professional marathon runner, and I am his running coach and physio." Well, the questions about professional affiliation were deftly avoided by explaining that Steve was recovering from knee surgery and was looking for a low-key warm-up race before relaunching his professional career. Now, I must point out that the story about Steve recovering from knee surgery was actually true. However, tearing a cartilage, hurdling a set of road cones with a kebab in his hand would probably not have held much water with the Amateur Athletics Association. Is that not an event? Road cone hurdling with kebab?
Should be, shouldn't it? Yeah.
Could be fun. The forms were duly faxed and completed with a suitable running history fabricated. New York, 2 hours 35. London, 2 hours 40. Marathons as far afield as Machu Picchu and the Marathon des Sables. Steve was truly a widely ranged professional athlete. Grinning mischievously to ourselves, we set off on the train, enjoying our first G&T of the weekend away. The lie began to unravel early on Saturday as we staggered, hungover and sweaty, to registration. We were given our starter packs, including our race numbers. Number 25, number 26. Told we were late, we were escorted by organisers to the professional runners' starting point. Here, groups of young gazelle-like athletes were stretching and prancing around. The odd glistening athlete gave interviews to the press. To say that Steve and I did not look like athletes that day would be stating the obvious. Slightly portly, smelling of curry, and Steve, having forgotten his running singlet, wearing a creased Frankie Says Relax t-shirt.
What?
It was difficult to be inconspicuous. The start was only more embarrassing as we lined up in front of the press and crowd for the pre-race photo shoot. The starting gun went, and even at our fastest sprint, we could not avoid the angry pushing and cajoling of the professionals charging past us at their half-marathon pace. After 500 metres and just out of sight, we collapsed on the grass, gasping for breath. At first the amateurs went past, then the fun runners, and finally the children. Even the man in full suit of armour clumped past us. So we need forgiveness. Long-suffering wife and mother-in-law, of course. Forgiveness from the people who gave up their Saturday to support such a wonderful race. Forgiveness from the professional athletes who take their running more seriously than us. Forgiveness from the fun runners, even the children who take their running more seriously than us. But mainly, forgiveness from the man who on that hot, sweaty Saturday afternoon was running the half marathon in a full suit of armour, which Steve and I managed to beat by 2 seconds in the end. I throw both Steve and myself on the mercy of the collective. I must add that although I am no longer an investment banker, Steve is now a very senior one in an international firm and keeps all of his running medals on the wall of his glass corner office. Well, very nice, and I'm sure there are going to be lots of running and half marathon confessions on the way. Let's see what Sister Bobby from the Priory makes of Quentin's confession.
Well, I'm slightly worried that you're even still married, because it seems that you spend every single weekend away from your seemingly lovely wife and never spending any time together. I don't know how you got away with it for so long that the wives didn't kind of come along and join and watch and kind of cheer along and go, well done. I'm not sure it's essential, actually, that for training that you drink alcohol, and I don't think that's true. I don't know whether it's worth the forgiveness, because it's not like you were running for charity and you weren't really even running for your own fitness. So I'm going to be pretty tough here, Quentin. Yeah. You are not forgiven.
Brother Matthew.
How is Steve getting anywhere near any running medals if he can't last 500 metres before collapsing on the side?
Poor.
Yeah, but, and turns up reeking of booze and curry. I mean, what on earth is going on there? Number one, when I heard this was a confession from an investment banker, I had something else on my mind. But I am...
Class war?
Yeah, probably. I am going to blame the organisers here, because there was clearly no due diligence done here on just exactly who this so-called professional athlete is. And if he turns up looking like he does in a Frankie Says Relax t-shirt, as I say, reeking of booze and curry, and clearly not an athlete, then it's frankly the organisers' fault.
And so therefore...
I forgive.
The Confessions Podcast.
Making another debut appearance, our newscaster of the day, it's Dahlia Raphael. Hello, Dahlia.
Thank you.
The Deaconess Dahlia.
Deaconess Dahlia, like it.
Would you be a forgiving person, or are you a harsh, hard-bitten journo?
I tend to be forgiving,
Really?
yeah, but this is probably the closest I've got to a confessional since reenacting The Sound of Music as a small child, so I'm very excited.
Is there a confessional in The Sound of Music?
Well, Maria goes and she says, I
Oh, I see.
confess this, that, and
Oh,
the
I
other,
see.
doesn't
Yes,
she?
I can see what. I
In a
can see
broad
what.
sense.
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying. Sorry about that.
That wasn't me.
Sounded very rude.
It sounded like Dahlia was had a few problems.
Excuse me.
Anyway, thank you very much indeed. So here comes today's tale. That's top production, that was. I think we're going to say that this one is from Josiah. Thank you, Josiah. Dear Simon and the assembled panel, after 50 years, I think it's time to confess to this, my most famous sin. He obviously ranks them. Anyway, this is his number one. In the 1960s, my grammar school's old sandstone buildings that had stood for centuries were to be flattened to make way for a new futuristic concrete and glass structure. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you progress. The first part, scheduled for the wrecking ball, was the biology lab. All useful items had been put into a temporary building. I was disappointed to miss out on the 8-foot human skeleton called Persephone, and I missed out on the embalmed sheep's stomach, which I wanted to get hold of. However, a stuffed 4-foot crocodile with a wonky tail was left behind. I asked Sir if I could have it, and amazingly, he agreed. What fun can you have with a stuffed 4-foot crocodile? Well, I shall tell you. Cycling home with it under my arm, I was subjected to much shouting and various attempts at comedic comments from passing pedestrians. "This town's got enough Crocs already, mate!" That kind of thing. I don't know if the pedestrians in this area were Cockneys, but...
But we've decided that for your accents...
For the
What does
moment.
that mean anyway?
Yeah, it
It's
doesn't
got
make
enough
any
Crocs.
sense.
What does that
Yeah.
mean?
It doesn't make any sense.
Why is that an insult?
Crocs.
No,
maybe?
they were
No.
just saying that they've got enough old people.
Oh, old people, is that what it is? Okay.
Is that what a croc...
I didn't realise.
I'd never heard of that. I thought croc was somebody who was injured. If you're crocs,
Yeah,
you're
well,
injured.
Croc... Oh,
Crocs. That
think-
doesn't. Yes, that insult didn't make any sense, which we shall say back in time to that person.
I think you're getting hung up slightly on a casual...
No, I don't think we are. I think
Totally.
it's central to the story.
Yeah, old folk, they're Crocs, aren't they? Crocs.
Oh.
It's a
Okay.
well-known thing.
No, it's
Okay.
not.
Well, I'm only arguing on behalf of Josiah, who's sending the
Okay.
confession. Some people getting hung up, just because someone moved your microphone. Anyway, you might like to know that I left my crocodile in many hilarious situations. In the sweet shop, in the gentleman's loo, and in the bushes of the local vet. I would only leave him in place for a few seconds, just enough to cause momentary panic. There was even talk of an escaped crocodile from the local zoo. Now, Croc was by now 1 foot shorter as his tail had fallen off. But amazingly, Mum, Dad and Sister Mary weren't aware of my new friend, who incidentally had been stuffed with his mouth wide open, looking quite menacing. He lived quite happily under my bed. Now, my sister, you should know, had a boyfriend called Keith. He was a bit flash, with his zippy, soft-top sports car, all chrome and trousers he was. One day, a day I have to say that was to see my final croc-related prank, Keith zoomed into our cul-de-sac with the top down. He revved the engine a bit just to let us know he was there, tootled his 3-tone horn. Is that what you do? I think that's what you do. Then entered the house to collect my sister. Whilst he was in the kitchen, chatting, preening and stroking his hair, I planted Croc in the boot of his car. Broken end first and mouth facing out. I even put a fag between his teeth. Don't smoke, kids. Actually, don't smoke Crocs, but it's more to the point. I then waited in my bedroom to witness Keith's discovery of said crocodile. The event exceeded all expectations. To this day, I have never seen anyone move backwards and upwards with such velocity without the aid of pyrotechnics. It was like something out of a cartoon. 1 minute, he was putting a bag in the boot. The next minute, he was running away down the drive, arms aloft and screaming. I actually think he had a little accident at the same time. Whilst I suspect he saw the curtains twitch, he was in no fit state to investigate the perpetrator of the prank. Having gathered himself together and launched my stuffed friend into the neighbour's garden, he and my sister zoomed off at warp factor 10 in his pathetic sports car. My sister and now brother-in-law, the Reverend Keith, how about that, have spent many happy years together, and it's probably about time that I said sorry and asked forgiveness from Reverend Keith and the panel, plus the family of friend Nigel, who became the proud owner of the Croc, the guy who lives next door. He frequently updates me on the latest victims of Croc shocks, and it all happened 50 years ago with this top crime from Josiah. This is his number one sin, which kind of means to me, I think, that Josiah's had a pretty good life. So what do we think about this, Sister Brett? Can you forget... Well, it's back to pranksters, but if you get your hands on a 4-foot crocodile, think of the fun you could have with that.
I love a good prank, as you know, and I think putting the crocodile in the vet's garden is brilliant.
Just
'cause,
momentarily.
you know, you would definitely think that was a real crocodile,
and then whip it
But,
away.
But I think Keith can't have been that bright, really, because he ran away having seen this crocodile, even though there's no way there could have been. It was in his car, right?
Yeah, it was in the boot of the car.
in
He
the boot of the car.
lifts the lid and there's a crocodile
if he
having a fag.
If you really thought about it, number one, why would the crocodile be having a fag? Number two, why would there be a crocodile in his boot anyway?
Yeah.
So I don't think he was very bright. So I kind of blame Keith for that, actually. Sorry if you're listening, Keith.
Reverend Keith.
Reverend Keith. So I forgive.
Deaconess. I don't know if deacon actually... I think deacons are just deacons. So anyway, Deacon Dahlia.
Josiah, I would have been more impressed if he'd given the Croc a name other than Croc. I think that's a bit poor not to have given him an alternative name.
This town's
But,
got enough Crocs already.
Even though that makes no
It
sense.
does make
It
sense.
does not make
Everybody
any
else
sense.
knows that it made sense.
I think it was quite a feat for him to cycle home with a 4-foot croc under his arm to even begin the tale. And having lived in sin for 50 years before admitting it, I think I have to let him off. Although sports car envy is not a good thing, but Keith sounded like he deserved it.
I'm not sure he's been living in sin, but anyway. But I know what you're saying. This is his most famous sin. Here comes Brother Matthew
Here's the thing.
shuffling up to the microphone.
I know I speak for the nation when I say that we were all against Keith the moment we found out he had a soft top, because nobody likes anyone with a soft top.
Why not?
No, Yeah, no,
That's
absolutely.
ridiculous.
No, it's not
Stop.
ridiculous. It's absolutely
You're
the
just
truth.
jealous 'cause you've
no,
never had one.
It's nothing to do with jealousy. It's just people with soft tops. And maybe this was actually a sort of road to Damascus moment for Keith, where he realised maybe I should not have a soft top and maybe I should get into the clergy instead, because I'm wasting my life with this soft top and the possibility of there being reptiles in my boot. So I am going to forgive for that. Pretty durable crocodile as well, seeing as it's been there for 50 years and it was thrown into a garden. Normally they sort of disintegrate, but...
So, can he not be so the clergyman has got rid of the soft top because he's become a clergyman? Is that,
yes,
can he not
that's
be
what I'm saying is that Keith decided I'm wasting my life with this car that should have a roof, but I've decided because I'm so cool and I need the hair blowing through my wind blowing through my hair, whatever. He's decided because of that he's going to be in the clergy.
Cloth. You can't be of the cloth and have a soft
No, you can't. No, you've shown me one clergyman with a soft top car. None
Vicar in a
exist.
soft top.
You're just asking for trouble, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
Wasn't that a Morrissey song, Vicar in a soft top?
Yes,
I think it was.
The Confessions Podcast.
Attention podcast listeners, the British Podcast Awards has opened entries for their Listener Choice Award. Can you believe the Confessions Podcast at the moment is awardless? With your help, we can fix this. Acting together, united, with one common purpose. If you're listening to the podcast online right now, head to britishpodcastawards.com/vote. It's all one word. British Podcast Awards, that's one word, .com/vote. Search for the Simon Mayo Confessions, select it, enter your name and email address, click submit. I mean, how much easier can it get?
This is the place where penitents seek our pardon for their sins. The Confessions Podcast.
Simon, I too have a dark secret way back from 1990 when I was the conscientious young mother of a 2-year-old toddler. I was always very careful to ensure that my baby was brought up in a green and caring manner. Homemade food, very few sweets, cloth nappies, eco-friendly detergents, no litter or waste, and a lot of time spent teaching manners, good behaviour in public, and consideration for others at all times. This is like mitigating circumstances.
Yeah.
This is really, I'm trying very hard. That's the opening paragraph. Toilet training was, of course, high on my perfect parental agenda. You'd probably be ahead of me on this one. One day I picked him up from nursery after a long and tiring day at work. I'm an archaeologist and called at a large national DIY chain store on the way home to buy some right-on cork floor tiles for my bathroom. My son, who had just proudly abandoned nappies for the proper toilet, was not the most patient of children, and a moment of uncharacteristic inattention from me whilst choosing the tiles saw him toddle off and become lost in the store, having motherly visions of him being buried under a pile of bricks or possibly being run over by a forklift truck. How about that? I abandoned the tiling department and quickly ran to look for him. I didn't have far to go. I soon heard this little voice piping up clearly from a nearby display of gleaming, ready-to-fit demonstration bathrooms. To my quiet horror, he was proudly sitting on the display toilet, with his trousers round his ankles, doing a number 2.
Hey!
"Mummy," he proudly shouted, "Mummy, I did it! I'm on the toilet, no paper!" Unusually for me, I remained very calm, quietly lifted him from the seat, firmly pulled up his pants and softly closed the lid on the number 2, which lay on the floor beneath the unplumbed dummy toilet. "It's okay, love, you did well," I whispered, fearing an all-out tantrum due to the lack of wiping and hand-washing. "You can have a lolly when we get home if you're quiet all the way to the car." Abandoning my quest for floor covering, I moved briskly away from the bathroom section and out into the car park before anyone noticed the lingering smell from the display toilet. I felt like an absconding shoplifter, desperate to put as much distance between us and the display as possible. I've always felt very guilty for leaving the enormous poo behind in their bathroom display for an unwitting salesperson or customer to discover at leisure. I just couldn't face the embarrassment of confessing on the spot and listening to them announce, "Cleaner required, bathroom aisle, line 6. On the tannoy for everyone else to hear whilst I stood by holding a demanding toddler who would be loudly inquiring as to why there was no toilet paper. I just went home, thankfully distributed gin for me and copious high-coloured sweets to my grubby little boy who is now nearly 22. I've never happily returned to this DIY chain since. It's the story. It comes from Chris. She seeks forgiveness. First of all, it's Father Matt. What do you say, man?
Do you know, I was with Chris all the way, and particularly for the killer line, no paper, but I'm afraid you've got to let staff know. You've got to let the staff know that that's happened. Imagine the stink.
Yes.
Imagine if it's summer. I'm sorry, no, you don't. No.
Sally.
Well, I have to tell you, I've been in a very similar situation myself when my son was about the same age, and the same thing happened, except it was in the bank manager's office, and he had refused me a loan, so I never apologised then, and I think you ought to be forgiven as well. Having been there myself, I completely understand.
The deciding vote then to Rebecca, who might have issues of herself in this area. Not yourself. When I say yourself,
Thank you very much.
You are toilet trained.
Thank you for pointing that out. I think if she told the staff, they would have understood, and I think she should have done. I agree with Matt, and I think I'm sorry she's not forgiven.
The Confessions Podcast.
This confession comes from Helen in Glasgow, and written in big letters. Says here, not for those of a squeamish tendency or perhaps eating their dinner.
Oh, I love these.
It has the title Blowing in the Wind.
Okay, we all know what's coming.
No G. Okay. So do you think that's enough of a warning?
I think so. I think we're all buying into this now.
Okay.
Yep.
Dear Brother Simon and the Collective, and all I'd say is, if at any stage in this story you feel yourself actually saying out loud or thinking, oh really, did you have to lower the tone like this? Hang on
Oh, really?
for the payoff.
Because it's going to keep going.
Okay. It's only now, following my retirement after 38 years working in the NHS, that I can unburden myself for this truly awful deed, and obviously names have been changed to protect, basically, me. It goes back to the early 1970s in a Glasgow hospital when I was a young, newly qualified staff nurse and had just landed my dream job in the operating theatres. I loved it. The drama, the excitement, the emergencies, the blood and guts, the things I saw were unbelievable, and I was in my element. This was the job I loved. All right, so far.
Yeah.
I'd been building up my scrubbing skills over the months, leading to more complex cases. So when there was a long colorectal case coming up, I wanted to scrub for it. This is a first confession. I've never used those words before.
Yeah.
Of course, the rather handsome surgeon with the twinkly eyes had absolutely nothing to do with my decision. The more experienced nurses were more than happy to take a backseat on this one. After all, they didn't need the experience, and who would want to stand at an operating table for 5 to 6 hours? All okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Things were going swimmingly, and I was loving it. Handing over instruments at lightning speed, the time was flying by. After about 3 hours into the operation, I felt a rumbling in my tummy. I put it down to hunger and ignored it. Half an hour or so later, I felt it again. Not only was it getting uncomfortable, but my tummy seemed to be getting a little bigger. And then it struck me what the problem was. It was wind.
Okay. Yeah. Happens to the best of us.
Well, actually, the whole thing about this is we've all done sort of vaguely similar things.
Of course.
Okay. Now, the night before, my mum had served up Brussels sprouts with our tea. And since we were the only two that liked them, I did indulge in 2 and possibly 3 helpings of those little green balls of utter deliciousness. 5 hours into the operation, the lovely surgeon asked for a suture. A row of stitches holding together the incision. I looked it up. Which meant we were closing up. Hurrah! I handed him his suture, his assistant got a pair of scissors, and I commenced my first swab and instrument count. All correct, I informed the surgeon, then started to put my instruments back in the trays where they belonged. I was in so much discomfort at this time, I decided that I really needed to do something about it. So I thought, if I walk away from everybody, between my 2 trolleys, looking busy with my instruments, and maybe wafting, no one would notice. All done it. The plan seemed foolproof, so I went for it. And oh, Father Simon, the relief. I'm sure my eyes rolled to the back of my head a little bit. My tummy deflated a little. I felt so much better. This was great. I furtively looked around, but nope, no one had reacted at all. Result. So I did it again and wafted the air around. And because it's what you had, it's just biology, everybody, okay? And then I moved back to the operating table. If you have already reacted inappropriately, then hang on.
Then out of the corner of my eyes, I saw the surgeon put the suture and the forceps down. And when I looked up, he was staring right at me with those twinkly eyes, but he wasn't saying anything. He then did a big theatrical sniff, which by now I didn't need to do because even with my mask on, I was thinking of Sprouts. 20 seconds later, the rest of the theatre team, they could smell it too. It's not funny yet. The circulating nurses, the anaesthetist, and the anaesthetic nurse. That's disgusting, they all chorused. The surgeon looked back at me. I thought, oh no, I've been rumbled, as it were. I was just about to confess to too many Sprouts the night before and apologised profusely when the surgeon said 16 words that will haunt me forever. Nurse, I think there's a hole in the bowel. We need to go back in. And he handed me the suture back. So Helen says my confession is threefold. Firstly, to the theatre team for the smell. Secondly, to the twinkly-eyed surgeon for making him think he had perforated the patient's bowel. But thirdly, most importantly, I apologise to the patient. Not only did I extend his surgery by 10 minutes, but I also allowed him to take the blame for the smell. When the surgeon, after finding no perforation, decided that he must just have passed wind himself in the normal way. Anyway, so everyone, by the way, P.S., everyone was fine in the end.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Just thought we'd add that one in at the end. So there's Helen in Glasgow's confession. Listen, I turned it down, okay? And then we toned it down. Anyway, but the thing is, we've all done similar things in separate kind of circumstances. I was on centre court at Wimbledon for 5 years. In the commentary box. Similar.
Pretty small box.
I'm just going to go off and get a fax.
Okay.
I think we can't use that anymore.
If you're working with Claire Balding, you have to have impeccable manners and top
Obviously.
standards. There you go. What'd you say, Sister Bobby?
Oh, it's a tricky one, isn't it, really, to know what to do? I think, given the fact that you didn't know the possible outcome of your actions, you didn't know that was coming.
No, of course, it was just a thing.
Then really, you did what you could. Given the fact that you were right near the end, it was fine. It's one of those
And
things.
she was doing good works.
She was,
doing
again,
very good
hospital
works.
staff, they are an amazing bunch of people at all levels. It is fantastic. So I would say, Helen, just the fact that you were in there scrubbing up, looking after this gentleman,
Yes.
that you can be forgiven for almost anything. And you really didn't know what was going to happen. So
Correct.
given the fact that you didn't know...
She could have said, it's all right, it was me.
Yes, but I think given that situation...
Maybe you didn't.
No one's ever done that. No one has ever in the history of the world
if you really
ever done
thought
that.
if you really thought it was going to be a problem, yes, you would.
Yes,
of
a
course.
twinkly-eyed surgeon gets involved at some stage.
Anyway, Helen, you are forgiven, but only just.
Brother Matthew.
It is. This is entirely human. It happens to the best of us. We've all done it, and let he who has not done it very much cast the first stone. But I am definitely going to be adding nurse. I think there's a hole in the bowel. We're going to have to go back in to my list of euphemisms. That's coming right out every time this happens again. So I am definitely going to forgive because we all do it.
The Confessions Podcast.
And that's it for another Confessions from the Crypt special. And if you enjoyed that and you want more, why not listen to me?
And me in our brand new Radio 2 show from 5 o'clock weekdays.
Plus a brand new Confessions podcast with Extra Wiley. Available lunchtime next Friday.
Go in peace.